A writer unleashes the curse on the Titanic in 1898. They declare Morgan Robertson a Satanist. The bathyscaphe in 2023 bears the same name as the ill-fated ship from the book over a century ago. American writer Morgan Robertson unleashes the curse of the Titanic 14 years before the sinking of the legendary ship in 1898. He published the novel Madness, or The Doom of a Titan. Early in the morning of April 15, 1912, the Titanic sank, almost exactly as the writer described it in his prophetic book. Before that, however, Robertson was declared a Satanist, and after the wreck, he was ousted and persecuted. A reminder of this curse was the drama of the search for the Ocean Gate expedition's bathyscaphe, Titan, which headed for the wreck of the Titanic and disappeared. Some attribute it to human error and carelessness, but others also intervened with different forces. And the main one is the curse in question. The most curious thing is that no one has so far been able to formulate this gap as a meaningful concept. Coincidence? As a writer, Morgan Robertson is not distinguished by any special artistic gift. But he uttered several true prophecies that came true, and this has made him famous to this day, and his book sells millions of copies every year. The most ominous and first of these prophecies involved the sinking of the Titanic. In his 1898 book, Robertson described a fabulous transatlantic liner called the Titan, unparalleled in size and opulence. He loads it with rich and self-satisfied people. And then the ship collided with an iceberg on a cold April night in 1898. The ship sank, but in the book it is also presented with a lot of edification because of the senseless lives of its passengers. 14 years later, the English shipping company White Star Line built a miracle and fairy tale steamer that was strikingly reminiscent of the one described in Robertson's novel. The new liner has a displacement of 66,000 tons, and Robertson's vessel is even larger at 70,000 tons. The real ship is 882.5 feet long, and the novel ship is 800 feet. The Titanic had 55,000 horsepower, and the Robertson had 50,000. Each had 3 propellers and could reach a speed of 25 knots. Both ships are estimated to carry nearly 3,000 people. And on top of that, they only have lifeboats for some of the passengers. Fatal. Both the novel and the real ship are declared unsinkable, but both crash fatally in much the same way. As soon as the novel was published, the writer was declared a Satanist and was allegedly pulling the devil by the tail. But after the Titanic tragedy, Morgan Robertson was literally ostracized by American society. His work is totally declared satanic. He himself became the victim of repeated attacks by complete strangers. Aggressive and prejudiced Americans stoned him on the streets of New York, slapped him, punched him in the stomach, tripped him and pushed him into the mud, or dropped trash cans on him. The writer died at only 53 years old, the main cause being believed to be an overdose of painkillers. In addition, there are theories that he was even poisoned, but this has not been positively proven. Predictions. In 1905, Morgan Robertson published another of his novels, The Underwater Destroyer. There he describes in detail the principle of the modern periscope used by submarines. Years later, he filed for a patent on the periscope, but the US Patent Office refused it, with the argument that it was not possible to implement it practically. There are other things that are considered prophetic of the writer. In 1914, Robertson published the short story, Beyond the Spectrum, in which he tells about a war between the United States and the Japanese Empire. At the time it was quite a popular subject, and he was not the only writer to exploit it. In his story, the war takes place in the Pacific Ocean, including Hawaii. With Robertson, however, the main objective of the Japanese was San Francisco. The samurai use a searchlight that emits ultraviolet rays and blinds the Americans with them. There is also the attack on Pearl Harbor. This turns out to be prophetic. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese did attack the naval base at Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States directly into World War II. Bathyscaphe curse, described by Morgan Robertson, has been talked about again since the Bathyscaphe incident. The most curious thing in this case is the coincidence of the names. The OceanGate expedition's submersible itself, descending to the wreck, is called the Titan, just as in 1898, it was the name of the luxury ocean liner that sank after hitting an iceberg. In Robertson's book, the British psychic Craig Hamilton Parker, who several years ago predicted Brexit and Trump's victory in the presidential elections, spoke about the curse of the Titanic. Already on June 19, just hours after it became clear that contact with the Titan had been lost, the British predicted a fatal end. He said that in this part of the Atlantic, there was some sort of taint that preyed on the rich who dared to challenge the ancient gods. There was also talk of an Egyptian mummy. Moreover, according to some, it was dropped at the end of the 19th century. And it lies at the bottom of the ocean, and from there it cursed. There is also a version that she was on the Titanic itself, but there is no reliable information about this. Graveyard. From the beginning, the Titanic has been the cause of so many tragedies. When my grandmother was a little girl, she lived in Southampton at the time of the sinking of the Titanic. She told me that one of the few survivors lived in their house. His sense of having lived through the tragedy tormented him so much that he finally hanged himself in his room. My grandmother used to say that many people in Southampton at the time believed that the ship was cursed. Ghosts or simple accidents in photos. Craig Hamilton Parker. Rumors of curses and eerie coincidences circulated this ill-fated ship, even extending into the realm of cinema. But whether these are mere accidents or whether there really is the intervention of ghosts, cannot be so easily said. And he continues, it was said that the sets of films related to the Titanic were surrounded by problems, as if they were under a curse. This also applies to the 1997 film Titanic, directed by James Cameron. During filming, many problems arose, leading some to believe that the project was under a curse. There were reports of bad weather, delays, and even accidents on set, adding to the mystique surrounding Titanic's ill-fated legacy. Strange coincidences and eerie incidents seem to follow the film's cast and crew. Several people involved in the film experienced personal tragedies shortly after its release, further cementing the notion of the film's curse. As a psychic and medium, I recognize that certain events can carry an energetic residue that affects the experience associated with them. The psychic further explains, the enormous tragedy and great loss of life associated with the Titanic may have left an imprint that resonated in the film industry, leading to these alleged challenges and supernatural events. However, it is important to approach these stories from a balanced perspective. Coincidences can happen in any project, and it is extremely important to consider the many factors that contribute to problems during a film production shoot. Sometimes the glimmer of a supposed curse or supernatural influence can overshadow more mundane and perfectly logical explanations. It is much more likely that there are coincidences or criminal incidents than looking necessarily for the intervention of ghosts and supernatural explanations.